Welcome to historic Trinity, the mother church of Detroit Lutheranism. Just as in the Middle Ages, when cathedrals were open places and the focus of city life with thriving discourse and festival celebration, historic Trinity played and continues to be an essential part in shaping the lives of Lutherans in Detroit. Responsible for spreading the word and establishing churches in the metro area, historic Trinity is as rich in history as the beautiful tapestries that hang on its walls. Historic Trinity's roots are firmly planted in Germany. In 1848, an uprising occurred as the people fought for national unity, including freedom of assembly and the press. After the failure of the revolution, thousands fled to America. Many German settlers, the majority of whom were Lutherans, settled in Detroit and began worship. A group of 17 men, unhappy with the direction of the local church, broke away and formed Trinity Lutheran. They affiliated with the new Missouri Synod and became the mother church in Detroit. Reverend Johann Michael Gottlieb Schaller was the initial pastor, and services were first held in the chapel of Christ Episcopal Church, located at the corner of Jefferson and Hastings. The congregation soon bought a wooden framed chapel from the Western Seamen's Friends Society, and they moved it to Rivard in Larned. The congregation worked diligently, erecting a parsonage on a lot next to the church, creating Trinity Lutheran School on High Street, and organizing the Ladies' Aid Society. By 1860, German workers, artisans, and intellectuals were now establishing themselves in Germantown, or what is now referred to as the Eastern Market. The Reverend Johannes Adam Hughley began more than 40 years of service with a flourish of activity. He initiated a new era, and Lutheranism began to grow deep roots in Detroit. Many schools, missions, and other congregations were begun by Trinity throughout the region, including 5 parishes in a decade. And throughout its history, Trinity continued working to see the Lutheran faith thrive. And now more than 132 parishes can trace their roots back to the mother church. As Trinity developed, the parishioners quickly outgrew the buildings. The school was moved to Sherman Street, and a new church made of red brick was built at Gratiot and Rivard as the Civil War came to an end. A hospital for soldiers and sailors was located next to Trinity, as well as the Trinity Cemetery on Mount Elliott Avenue. The Lutheran Home for Orphans was also formed, and in later years became the Lutheran School for the Deaf. Once the Civil War hospital was no longer needed, it was converted into a parsonage for the Reverend and his 12 children. Christian education was very important to Reverend Hughley, and he encouraged a bright young boy, William Dow, whom he first noticed at a local shop where the child was reading Latin. Under the pastor's tutelage, the Reverend Dr. Dow became a scholar and was the primary writer of the English translation of the Triglot, the symbolical books of the Evangelical Lutheran Church. Trinity's Dow Library is now named in his honor, and as homage to Reverend Hughley, the auditorium is named after the man who initiated the new era for Detroit Lutheranism. In 1905, a social hall was built behind the church, and in 1913, the church became incorporated as a Michigan ecclesiastical organization. Communities change, and 2 important factors had an impact on the church during the first quarter of the 20th century. The primary shift was the mass production of the automobile. Second, Trinity began offering English services in addition to the original German language ones. And due to dwindling numbers, the schoolhouse was sold, and the school merged with St. Peter's Lutheran School. Even though membership had declined, Reverend Otte worked to spread the word in many ways, including helping to establish Valparaiso Lutheran University in Indiana, and collaborating on The Agenda, a liturgical book for Lutheran worship services. Reverend Dr. Gilbert Theodore Otte took over the parish from his ailing father in 1927, faithfully taking care of his flock for 56 years. To continue to spread the word, he helped start the Detroit Lutheran Hour, which was also broadcast live from the church. In thanks to God for healing their daughter from polio, Trinity members Mr. and Mrs. Charles Goss graciously donated $400,000 for a new church and parsonage. They wanted to ensure that there would always be a beautiful Lutheran church in downtown Detroit. The old church was demolished, and the cornerstone of the new church, which is its current home, was laid Thanksgiving Day in 1929. Trinity was built with only the finest materials and craftsmanship, and the best in liturgical art is depicted in its materials. W.E.N. Hunter designed the church in the style of 16th century pier and clerestory Gothic, which until that time had only been seen in the great cathedrals of Europe. A prime example of this neo-Gothic style is the Triforium Gallery, a narrow passage in the thickness of the wall with arches opening onto the nave. The church is made of vari-colored granite and Indiana limestone, with a slate roof and floor, oak woodwork, and stained glass. Soon after, a study was designed to resemble Martin Luther's 16th century German study. In the late 1930s, World War II was underway, and Trinity Church started to drop its German identity. 85 men of Trinity proudly served their country in the armed services. After the war, the population in downtown Detroit began moving in droves to the suburbs. However, Pastor Oddie remained firm in keeping the church in the downtown area. In his quest to ensure that Trinity was the center for Lutherans in the metro area, he was an activist and helped start several organizations, including the Lutheran High School Association, the Lutheran Council for Women, as well as the Detroit Valparaiso Guild and the Trinity Guild. Trinity's parish hall is named Oddie Hall in his honor. By the early 1980s, Trinity's future was in doubt. The city never recovered from unrest in the 60s, and Detroit's neighborhoods had permanently changed. Membership had fallen to only 145 families, and there were no children in Sunday school. Holy Trinity Lutheran Church merged with Trinity, and the cemetery was sold. Two changes then occurred to begin a new era and restore the church. First, the congregation formed a board to fund and restore both the church and parish house facilities. Second, Reverend Dr. David Eberhard was elevated to pastor. He also served as a Detroit City Councilman for several years while working at Trinity and was able to have a significant impact on the decisions which shaped the development of Detroit. Dr. Eberhard strongly believed that the church needed to be an open place, a focus of city life. He was determined to find a role for downtown churches in America, and he wanted the church to serve the total community. He opened the parish and welcomed everyone. Utilizing his business experience, Dr. Eberhard worked with a variety of sources to revitalize the church and get people into the pews. He employed new strategies, including giving guided tours, which became popular with such jewels as a secret staircase hidden behind a revolving bookcase, a trio of life-size pastors in glass cases, and even his Passion, an assemblage of dollhouses. Another popular artifact on the tour was the 1866 crucifix and painting from Oberammergau, Germany. Soon, weddings and meetings were being scheduled, and newcomers as well as old-timers began to fill the pews. The congregation, while small, had begun to grow, and membership doubled to almost 400. In 1984, the great tradition of celebrating Oktoberfest began, and is still a primary fundraiser enjoyed by all. In an effort to develop and fund programs that meet the needs of the Detroit metropolitan community and preserve the architectural heritage of the church, Historic Trinity Incorporated was founded as an ecclesiastical, cultural, and community resource. In an effort to develop a clear identity for the church, the parish's name was officially changed to Historic Trinity Lutheran Church. Also, as part of the plan, Historic Trinity was placed on the city, state, and national historic register. The church then began the long task of restoring the cathedral to its magnificent glory. The organ and the church interior were refurbished, and a great traditional milestone occurred as the grandsons of the mural and stained glass artists lovingly restored the works their ancestors had created. A new lighting system and an elevator were also installed. By the time all improvements were completed, restoration costs were well over $3 million. To further the Mother Church's goal of reaching out to all, the cathedral ministries began for groups in all walks of life. The historic Trinity staff includes the many cathedral pastors who add to the inspiration and diversity of the worship services. In the mid-1990s, a citywide outreach ministry was created to win the lost, lift up the least, and transform the last in the city of Detroit. In 1998, the vital ministry grew and became independent as the Detroit Lutheran Ministries. The hard work of the church and her dedicated people began to bear fruit and grew membership to more than 1,100 members by 1997. Just before the millennium, statues and carvings from Our Savior Lutheran found a new home at historic Trinity in the Hughley Auditorium. They were created by a master craftsman in Italy. The artwork spreads out like the branches of a tree depicting the primary unit of society, the home. As the 21st century rolled in, historic Trinity celebrated its 150th anniversary with 1,450 members. A flurry of activity surrounded this special occasion, from concerts and art exhibits to seminars and festivals. Books on church artifacts were produced, needlepoint cushions were created, and exterior restoration took place. To continue to connect to the congregation and the city in every manner possible, Historic Trinity created its first website in 2002. The robust site is a wealth of data and includes traditional information as well as other interesting tidbits from the artisans who helped create the beloved church to the origins of different Christmas ornaments. And Christmas time is especially magical at the church. From Thanksgiving through the Epiphany, Historic Trinity Lutheran Church celebrates the most outstanding Christmas season of any downtown church in Detroit. The grounds experience a transformation filled with a myriad of treasures, including 250 creches from around the world and numerous Christmas trees, as well as a collection of angels. More than 15,000 people will see the Mother Church during this season and enjoy a live nativity, candlelight programs, children's plays, and concerts. The cathedral ministry continued to help grow the church, and new groups were founded, including the Internet Task Force and the Lutheran Travelers. Restoration, an ongoing mission, continued once again with the roof, Oddie Hall, and the refurbishment of the organ, to name just a few of the projects that were undertaken to prepare for the next milestone. In 2010, Historic Trinity celebrated its 160th anniversary, boasting more than 2,000 members and the title of the fastest growing church in downtown Detroit. The front door of Historic Trinity welcomes one and all, portraying religious figures from Martin Luther to the Woman of Canaan. Historic Trinity has proudly been the source of regional outreach from its earliest days of building schools and helping veterans to today, where it continues with programs such as senior services and seminars to the public. And the congregation continues to learn and thrive through its ever-growing Sunday school, Bible classes, study groups, choir, bell choir, fellowship activities, and our shared ministry with other churches. There are many challenges for the urban church, but based on its rich and long history, the congregation and staff will continue to spread the Word of God and find unique ways to include every Lutheran in the area. Welcome to Historic Trinity, the Mother Church of Detroit Lutheranism, an urban place of worship that transcends from its walls into the city of its people.